Okay, so I really appreciate the last day and a half that we've had here, because some of you may not realize, but this meeting has actually been in the planning for about 3 years. About 3 years ago, the American Society for Nutrition formed a subgroup for the Food for Health initiative, and we've been meeting, a number of us, many of you in the room here, to talk about these very issues and trying to get the nutrition science community to embrace the fact that there is a difference between population recommendations about nutrients and the patient individualization of how you look at a disease state. So I know we're not allowed to talk about the MF word here. Well, let me define that one. That's a little bit too open-ended. Medical foods. But we heard about it early, and you know, I took a look at, for my part in this presentation, I kind of looked at what we talked about the last couple of days, and I'm just excited that we are thinking about the possibility of nutrients being much more involved in the disease process, the compensatory process that the disease impacts on how normal nutrients might be treated differently, and even that there may be different forms of nutrients, or we heard just a little while ago, bioactive substances or nutrients and other food substances that may in fact have legitimate role in treating the patient to help them do a better job with the disease process. So let me, if I can find out where the clicker, oh, here it is. So I just have a few, I don't have a big presentation, I just have a few summaries of thoughts that came about as a result of yesterday and today. What is really important is that we are documenting nutrient needs and establishing therapeutic dose and composition so that we can standardize medical nutrition therapy for disease states. Now, that's not a well choreographed sentence, but basically it's saying we're acknowledging right now that there are specific nutrient needs, and there may be dose and type of nutrients that can actually have a role in providing. Medical nutrition therapy has a definition. It's being very popularized by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, has been very active, and a lot of other groups. But in the practice, and I spent 7 years in clinical nutrition practice early in my career, actually treating patients, and that's what I think is the most important thing about our discussion about disease states. It's about the patient, the benefit to patients, and the longer and the more complex and the more hurdles we put in the way of getting effective products in the hands of the patient under the supervision of their doctor, the patient is the one who's suffering, not us in the science world. So the more we can do to accelerate that process, a lot of people stand to benefit. Okay, so I think this session has really elevated the role of nutrition as a central part of patient care, but I would also argue that it's cost-effective patient care. Many of the things that you can use nutritional therapy, if you will, can reduce symptoms, can reduce complications. We talked about arginine and the reduction in post-surgical infections, shorter lengths of stay. Those have huge cost benefits, and the products that are nutrient-based are typically very much lower cost than the drugs that we're trying to use to fight the disease in itself. So I think this is an important elevation of this whole discussion. Now, when we have clear scientific process and we establish a distinctive nutritional requirement in a disease state, we've been talking about that, we talked about a number of different conditions in the last few days, and there are others that we didn't touch on. That allows, I believe, the development of an appropriate regulatory framework. It provides the agencies with the tools to say, we want to make sure things are safe, we want to make sure that there's evidence of efficacy, but there's, again, this is something that is that they're looking for help from us, in other words. The regulatory agency doesn't do this in a bubble. they depend on the scientific community to give them the tools to make good regulatory decisions. Safety, absolutely. But then efficacy and the ability to show that the nutrients at the cellular level, maybe not at the whole body level, but at the cellular level, have a role to play and can improve the disease process for the patient again. Okay, so how do we get solutions now? And this is where we haven't talked a lot about the solutions, but new products will be coming. Innovation, the food industry, the scientific community is full of good ideas, but we want to make sure that these innovations are consistent with clinical practice guidelines that recommend improved patient outcomes, and they have the potential to either modulate the disease progression or the severity of the disease or the side effects or the interaction with drugs and treatment therapies, whatever it may be. But this is where I think I take a little different view than our previous speakers right now. We don't need the public health level of evidence because we're talking about a doctor-patient interaction. And I believe what Dr. Short talked about this morning is very relevant. You try what works for that patient. If it works, you keep going, you keep modifying it, you keep monitoring the outcomes. And if it doesn't work, you change to another one, change the dose, change to a different alternative. But there is built in this one-to-one relationship between your healthcare provider and the patient itself. And I think we sometimes overlook the fact when we're trying to make general recommendations for a population, there's no general population of a disease. That we've heard so much about heterogeneity of the disease process and the different types and the causes. We're really talking about one-to-one relationships, and that is actually built into that medical food regulations. It has to be under the supervision of a medical professional. Not only just one time saying, here's the diet for your cancer treatment, but ongoing, regular, recurring. So this is already built into the framework of what we in the industry are facing in trying to bring products to solution here for patients. So then, just the last one, I think we've heard enough today that we should all be doing our best to find ways to increase priority of nutrition research for funding. There's a lot of questions we haven't answered. We could obviously do better with bigger patient size. I really hope we can tap into the personalized medicine, which my experience with personalized medicine is they're collecting all this big data, but there's not a lot of nutrition information going into that big data pool. And I think that's unfortunate, but it's something that we should be able to encourage. And again, beneficial health economic outcomes, that has the ring of cost savings, that gets the attention of Congress, that gets the attention of hospital administrators. If you can save money, wow, that should be an easy one. And yes, I believe that the appropriate use of nutritional treatment and support of patients that are in a disease situation can in fact save money in the long run. So that's really all I wanted to share this morning, but I think this is I'm very encouraged by what we heard the last 2 days, because there's enthusiasm here, there's scientific rigor, and as we just continue this process, I think we'll get there. But let's not take so long, because there are patients that are waiting right now that could benefit from some of the things we talked about. Thank you.